Hey guys, SK Cloudy here, coming at you guys with my Mom Bane and Blight build. Pretty sure most of you are very aware of all these Mom builds going around this league. It's become very popularized as one of the best bossing builds. You got your Mom Miners, you got your Mom Blade Vortexers, and you also got your Mom Bane slash Blight. I guess you can say Chaos Mom. This is my variation of the build. I got inspiration from Diggs, which there is, I guess it was on the Chinese servers. There's a guy who made this build, but slightly different from your normal variation. Your normal variation of build generally uses Cloak of Defiance with the Xerius Foible and Omekins, and the way that those builds are revolved around is being dodge capped while having a fairly decent EHP pool. My variation is slightly different. So we don't run Omekins, we don't run the Xerius Foible, we don't run Cloak of Defiance. Our build is specifically not played around dodge cap. It's actually played around fizz mitigation and having max reses. So ours is completely built differently. It's not like, because you can still get one shot by like really big things on the Cloak of Defiance, things like Shaper Slams, Elder Slams. It takes a bit more investment to like tank Cyrus Clouds and 3-stage meteors and stuff like that, and a lot of times you can't even tank those. This build can tank it all. It can tank Cyrus Storm Clouds, it can tank 3-stage meteors, Elder Slams, Shaper Slams, they're all a joke. So basically the way I have mine set up, it's on a Scion. You can do this on a Pathfinder, but you won't be able to run exactly the setup I'm doing. As you can see, I am set up with 3 large clusters versus 2 as majority of the people who play these builds do it. And that's why I choose Scion, because Scion you get an extra 5 skill points. And so the way it works is, if you see my health is at 4k, and so is my mana. And the way Mind Over Matter works, right, which Cloak of Defiance has, Mind Over Matter, so 30% of damage is taken before life. Well, then on the Scion, you also get an additional 8 here. And then we also have an additional 15 on our chest from the Elevated mod, and it's a Shaper mod. So we do some quick calculations. We go 30 plus 8 plus 15. We have 53% of damage taken from mana before life. So our life is essentially at 4. Okay, so we go 4, let's just say it's at 4,000, and you multiply that by a 1.53. Our effective HP pool before any type of mitigation is 6.1k, which pretty decent for a standard build, you know. But we go here, right? We go to our stats, our defenses. Without any flasks, without any endurance charges, we are currently at 21 physical damage reduction. Now, when we pop flasks and double or 4 endurance charges, we're at 74 mitigation off the rip, and then 71. And then we also have on the chest piece the fizz damage taken from hits as cold damage. So on top of the 74% fizz damage reduction, we take 15% of that damage as cold. Well, then we also run a Taste of Hate, which is 20% fizz damage taken as cold. But then you also go, well, if you look at the POB under calculations or items, if we hover over Taste of Hate, it says that flask effect modifiers, we have 72%. So at a base of 20, you times that 1.72. It does not count decimals. PoE does not count decimals. It always rounds to the nearest whole number, whether it be higher or lower. Well, lower. It never goes higher, I should say. So even if I was at 34.9, it would go down all the way to 34. So 34 plus 15, that's 49% of fizz damage taken as cold. Well, then we also have the fizz 20% less cold damage taken. Well, that's also affected by flask effectiveness. So now we have 34% cold damage reduced taken, or less damage taken, right? And less damage is a more multiplier. That just completely just says, hey, I'm taking your damage and we're getting rid of 34% of it. And then you also affect that we have 77 all res all around. Fire, cold, lightning, and chaos. So our fizz damage, we don't really take any. Like a lot of people, they can't take Azaro swipes in the Uber labs. It tickles us. It doesn't matter. So that's where a lot of our defenses come. So if you look at the POB, if you go to calculations, you can see we have an effective hit pool of 159,000. And that is because of all our defenses. So our max reses, all the fizz mitigation and all that. Just as you can tell, see here, our cold and light, our fire and lightning EHP just was 77 max res. We're at 81,000, but because of our cold, because of Taste of Hate, we're at 129,000. Remember, a lot of our physical damage is being converted into cold. So that's what makes this build extremely tanky. And then of course you also have Agnostic, which 20%, you sacrifice 20% of your mana to recover that much life. So 20% of 4056, so 4056 times that by 2.2, we regen 811 life per second. And then we also can't forget that we also recover another additional 8%. So we'll just say if you had it max rolled for 10%, right? That's an additional 800. So that's 1600. Well, let's not also forget that on a Scion, the Pathfinder, we also gain another 4% when we use the Life Flask. And that is why we use the Hollow Hybrid Life Flask. And the reason we also use the Hollow Hybrid Life Flask, it's because we have Hardened Scars. So not only does it count as a Mana Flask and a Life Flask, but it also allows us to proc our 4% life recover and 11 seconds of Fortify, which is another 20% less damage taken. And then you also take in the fact that we're running a Berserk. Divergent Berserk is 19% less damage taken while it is active. So when you are big and ragey, you take 19% less damage taken. Well, then we also have the Helmet enchant. Berserk has 30% increased effect. So we open up another calculator at 19 times that by 1.3. That's 24% less damage taken total from the Helmet alone, which is huge. This is what allows us to tank pretty much anything. If we have Berserk up, we got an Endurance Charge and some Flasks. That is where you are seeing the total of 159,000 effective EHP pool. And also Arcane Cloak. You also got to remember, we get a buffer shield with that as well, which is another effective 2600 EHP added onto our existing EHP. Now to go a little bit over the guide, the build. So as the build, we use Scion to go 3 large clusters. Doing the non-Omekin non-dodge build, we can actually skip out on this whole right side of the tree, which takes up a lot of points, and we can invest it into an additional cluster that equals more damage, more mana, more EHP. And then doing that, also we use the Thread of Hope here, which allows us to grab all the life and mana nodes here, and also the one here. But more importantly, it also allows us to get the Anointed Flesh, which is giving us a +1 all max res. Same thing is down here. This also gives us +1 all max res. And also I go through the middle tree, because in the middle tree you get the chance to avoid chill and being frozen. And of course your Taste of Fate also has chance to avoid being chilled and frozen. So if you look here, the way we are stun immune is we have chance to avoid being stunned on our flask. We have chance to avoid being stunned on a couple jewels, as long as you have your belt with flask effect and you have at least 2 jewels with chance to avoid being stunned, which I have one there and one here. And we're also running a Conqueror's Potency for more flask effect. If you look at our defenses, we have 116% stun avoidance. So with this flask alone, we are stun immune. With the Taste of Hate, as you can see, we are 111 chill avoidance and 101 freeze avoidance. So we're freeze immune while we have Taste of Hate up, which, because we are technically a flask finder, we have insane amounts of reduced flask charges used and increased flask charges gained. We have insane flask duration because we're using flasks. Pretty much we can always have our flasks up. Even during boss fights, they'll always regenerate during boss fights. As you can see, I already gained back majority of my flask charges just using it, and it's already back up before my cooldowns are up. So we pretty much have permanent flasks. So with being able to do this in the tree like this, I am able to pretty much not use Cloak of Defiance, like I said. So the way our items are catered, we have damage taken from mana before life, which Cloak of Defiance only has 10%. So this is 5% more. We also get Explode, which is very nice for map clearing. You can't get Explode unless you get it on a bow if you're using Cloak of Defiance, which getting it in a bow is very expensive. in the first place, but also you miss out on the +1 support gems, and the +1 support gems was huge for your single target damage. Like if you look here, all our support gems are extremely high level, and we do a lot more damage having the socketed support gems. So this is a nice way of getting good map clear and not worrying about corpses and all that. It just feels fantastic. So that we got physical damage from hits taken as cold. We also have 4%. Yes. I'm trying to make a YouTube video, sir.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know.
Anyways, going on. So we have the additional physical damage reduction. That is the normal mod. That is not a influence mod, and it does, you can tell it does not have a fizz tag. So the way we made this chest is we got pretty much all our prefixes done, which is very easy. You awaken an orb, a elevated mana, and an elevated explode. Simple as that. And the physical damage taken hits as cold damage. That is tagged with cold. So all you have to do is fill in your suffixes, augment cold, remove add cold, and you get your physical damage from hits taken as cold damage. To get the physical damage reduction suffix mod, that's a bit more of a pain in the butt. You're pretty much gonna have to constantly get reforged suffixes keeping prefixes until you hit it. And according to Craft of Exile, when we looked it up, it's about a 1 in 61 chance. So it can be a pain in the butt, but to make your best in-slot chest, that is the way to do it. And then of course you augment your lightning and chaos. In terms of rings, we just have a ring with a lot of reses, life, mana. That's all you need on one ring. Of course, the second ring will be Essence Worm. Essence Worm is needed because it reserves no mana, lets us run our Malevolence, which is scaled by Supreme Ego. And then of course we have a Malevolence damage over time multiplier, Watcher's Eye. So that gives us a lot of damage. All right, in terms of gloves, these are new this league. These are ritual gloves. These are the Nexus gloves. As you see the implicits, 30% reduced mana, and then 30% chance when you pay a skill's mana cost to gain that much mana. You pay that mana, but you also gain that mana back. And the way that translates is, people think it's bad because it's reduced mana, but it's only reduced. It's not less. If it was 30% less mana, these gloves would be horrible because then you would have no effective mana pool. But as you can tell, it only takes away 300, which is not bad for this build. Now, when you're playing the Maw Miner, you want as much mana as you possibly can get because that's your only burst damage. But the nice thing about Bane and Blight is what we do is you just pop Arcane Cloak, and then you do this and you cast your Blight, and you're just consistently consuming your mana at a higher rate. And that's what makes our Indigon ramp so well on these builds. And so the way that these gloves work, even though let's say we cast Bane, right? It costs 10,000 mana. Let's say we have 10,000 mana. At a 30% chance, I may cast it once, but my mana won't move because the gloves worked. When you pay that, you pay a skill's mana cost to gain that much, it's literally instantaneous. It's an instant thing that happens. So there's no waiting on the regen. So basically what these gloves are accounting for is like 30% chance whenever you cast something, you use it, but you don't use the mana. But using it still counts for your Indigon. So it helps you ramp and continuously ramp the Indigon much more effectively than to say you were to use regular sorcerer gloves. Now these gloves are insane when you think of it like that, right? Let's say on an average with silk gloves, I can spend 10,000 mana a second. These ones pretty much give me 30% more. Maybe even more than that. Because as you're not using it, you get more mana back, so you actually get to cast more times. So in terms of ramping for Indigon, these things are huge. It works the same way for Blade Vortex. So Blade Vortex, you ramp it by continuously casting it as well, correct? Well, that's why these gloves are insane for Blade Vortex and Bane and Blight. Very underrated, not really known on how they work and how it works in game, but that is how it works. These gloves are absolutely best in slot. Can't do anything about it. So these gloves, all we do is elevate damage over time, chaos over damage time multiplier, awaken or orbit, and hope you have nothing else bricked. And then of course your caster's caster, life is life, and then reses you just augment. Usual basic harvest crafting stuff. Belt. I get a lot of questions on the belt on how to make my belt. As you can see, we got life, mana, reduced flash charges, mana recovery, and a res. The easiest way to make these belts is buy a base Stygian that has the T1 mana, has the T1 reduced flash charges used, and pretty much you just fill up the prefixes And on the suffix, you cannot roll attack mods, and you redeem orb slime it. So you have to make sure on the suffixes it only has reduced flash charges, and it's a 1 in 3 chance to hit T1 mana recovery. So it's a bit of a gamble, and now that the build is so popular, there's not many bases left on the market, but that's generally the easiest way to craft these. If you don't hit the T1 mana recovery, you can always do remove add influences and eventually hit it. There's not too many mods on just a redeemer only belt, so that's not horrible. All right, now boots. Everyone uses Omekans, but ours is slightly different. We go for +1 max endurance charges and phase damage reduction. Those are the most 2 important mods. Now they are very pain in the ass to get. As you can tell, but they're both warlord mods and they don't have tags. Easiest way is to buy a base. I got lucky. I bought these bases. These bases, of course, as you can see, also have supported skill effect duration, which is huge because, you know, we're playing a damage over time chaos build. Skill effect duration is massive for this build, but also Socket Gems is supported by level 15 increased duration. What that means is we get an extra link on our arcane cloak. So our arcane cloaks last 10 seconds. And then that's, you know, I mean, what more can you really explain from that? That's 10 more seconds of full mitigation. Amulets, we do the same thing as well. We have Fizz mitigation on the amulet with, of course, damage over time, +2 for int, chaos, and then we got life. And then we have crafted frenzy charges because, as you can tell, we're res capped for our max reses. The lightning res is a little bit low, but we have a curse flask, and that's always up during maps, so we don't have to worry about LE weakness or any of that. And basically the way I did this one was I found a intelligence base, and then I awakened or orbed it with the physical damage reduction, which is on Elder. Then from there, I went ahead and blocked my suffixes. I augmented chaos. It's a 50-50 pretty much in order to get +1 chaos skill gems, or non-chaos is extra chaos, which is an Elder roll. So pretty much we did that. So that's how, and then after you do that, of course, you block your prefixes, you augment chaos, and then you remove add until you get T1 damage over time multiplier. Now this says T2, but it says T2 because Hunter and Elder both have this chaos damage over time multiplier tag, or affix. So that's why it says T2, but this is actually T1. So make sure if you get 13 to 16 on this, you don't roll over it, because that is in fact T1. And then of course we do minimum frenzy charges because we're playing, you know, Blight as our main target of damage, and frenzy charge equals faster cast equals more stacks of Blight equals more damage. All right, going on. We have our quiver. So the quiver, we have damage over time multiplier, chaos res, chaos damage over time multiplier, max chaos res to make sure we can get the 77 chaos res cap, and then move speed and life. The easiest way to do these quivers is to get damage over time multiplier. Generally, you would just alt roll for that. After you do that, you want to block your suffixes out, and then you want to augment chaos onto the prefix, the maximum chaos res. It's a 50-50. It's either max 1 chaos or max 2 chaos. So you just do remove adds until you get 2. After that, you block your prefixes, you augment on chaos, and the way you want to get, if the only way to really successfully to get T1 chaos res and T1 chaos damage over time multiplier is you block the prefixes, you add remove until you get T1 chaos res, you remove the crafted block craft prefix, or cannot roll change prefixes, and then you augment chaos. So the chaos damage over time multiplier has only 2 tiers, so it's a 50-50. If you don't hit it, then you have to do the gamble and do remove chaos. If you remove the chaos and you hit the chaos res, that's fine. You block prefixes, you remove add chaos until you get to chaos res again, and repeat the process. If you hit the max chaos res, well, unfortunately, you have to bring the base back down to what it originally was, because you have to have that first. So in order, you always have to get the max chaos res first, the chaos res second, and then the chaos damage over time multiplier will be the last aug, which is always a 50-50. All right, now in terms of POB. So as you can see, on average, we consume about 10,000 mana a second when we're ramping. We get power charges, but the power charges don't do nothing. We have 1 frenzy charge, we have endurance charges, alchemist genius, we casted a spell, we got 3 sigils, we got 11 wither stacks. And so the way we get wither stacks is, people are wondering, you know, you don't use spell totem with wither. Well, the thing is, with anomalous withering step, when you link this with a enhance, if you look here, it inflicts 11 withered debuffs for the first time each enemy enters the area. So basically, instead of waiting for your totems to ramp up or they can getting killed and you have to recasting totems, the way we do it is we just tap Withering Step once and boom, they have 11 withered stacks already. So this is a very underrated and not very used skill gem for these builds, but it has to be Anomalous Withering Step and it has to be linked with Enhance. Without Enhance, it only inflicts 9. So with Enhance, it inflicts 11. And if you look in the POB, between 9 and 11, that's almost 2.2 million damage. So that is very huge. So there's no waiting time on the Wither stacks. It's instantaneous. But yeah, as you can tell, Blight, we do about 40 million Cyrus DPS on full channel with maximum stacks and pretty much full. That's including with Val Righteous Fire and Righteous Fire. That's just full ramp. But other than that, so for clusters, the way we have it is one cluster, we have Unholy Grace, Misery Everlasting, and Wicked Pow. And it has to be in these 3 orders. I spent some time trying to figure out what different combinations and what orders will come up, but this gives us chaos damage with also increased cast attack speed, which is really big because that gives us more cast speed for Blights. We also get Misery Everlasting because we run Bane with Despair in it. So skill effect duration, Despair curse effect, really good damage. Other cluster, we run Wicked Pow for skill effect duration and Dark Ideation. And this gives us 2 increased chaos damage per 100 maximum mana, which is pretty big. Times that by 80. Well, technically 40, because we have 4,000. We're getting the maximum stack, which is 80% increased chaos damage. And that is also why we try hard to get the 4,000 mana. And then we have Unholy Grace here. And in this order, that's how you get the Dark Ideation and Wicked Pow. Last one is Misery Everlasting for Despair skill effect duration, but also Touch of Cruelty, because enemies hindered by you take 10% increased chaos damage. And remember, your Blight does have natural stacks of hinder, so this is important as well. So we have Misery Everlasting, Touch of Cruelty, and Unholy Grace, and in this order, that's how you get these 2. For our medium clusters, it's like any other Mom minor builds. You have Liquid Inspiration, Spike Concoction for 1. The other ones are all distilled and liquid. Now, because most Mom builds only run 4 clusters, you generally have 3 distilled, 3 liquid. I figured since I'm running a 6 cluster, I'd go ahead and go for Brood Potency for the other one and Liquid Inspiration. They're a tad bit cheaper, but you also get the increased damage over time and increased flash charges gained, which is really nice. So that's why for these ones, we spec'd in for those. I may change out my other distilled and liquids potentially for the Brood Potency. I'm not quite sure yet. We'll have to figure that out later. And then also, this is the same exact tree you would use for Blade Vortex if you wanted to go this route with max Fizz mitigation and not worrying about being dodge capped, and you wanted to spend a little bit more money min-maxing. Basically, you would just change out the clusters, of course, for your cold clusters and all that. So you can do the Blade Vortex variation with the same tree setup, same exact items. All you would end up doing is changing out the bow. You would get, instead of, well, you don't even change out the bow necessarily. Well, you would change the mods. You get the +1 socketed support gems, or more damage is spell damage, spell double damage implicit. That does do more damage, it's about 10% more damage. And you would just roll it for strength dex gems instead of strength int gems, which is much easier to roll over the strength int gems. But yeah, pretty much just, it's all around extremely tanky build.
Can I not have
you get to spend a good bit of money into it, min-maxing it the way I have. It's very fun. I'll go ahead and I can run a quick map real quick to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. Let's see if we have any atolls. We don't have atolls. Do we have any parks? No parks. Let's go Iceberg. Actually, no Iceberg. I just bought Watchstones set up there. All right, let's do a Burial Chambers, for example. Burial Chambers. So Burial Chambers, we don't care what mods it is. Basically, just go in and run it. So for mapping, it's very, very, very simple. It's pretty quick. We got Explode Chests. All you do is you pretty much pop on your RF, run around, and just pop. Let me change out my flask real quick. I have a Bottled Faith, which is what I normally use for bossing. So for bossing, I usually swap out Bottled Faith with Quicksilver or vice versa, depending if I'm mapping or bossing. Just pop on your RF and then you just run around and pretty much you just one tap every single pack there is. Like,
And
You just
kindly stay dead.
explode and one tap everything. So in terms of mapping, it is generously fast compared to like for a chaos build, right? And it has good damage. It's not like ED Contagion when you're sitting there waiting for things to die and then eventually the contagions like go popping. And no, it's just it's a one tap, go in, one tap, pop, go in, one tap, pop, go in, one tap, pop. It's very, very, very nice. So you're just running through. Pop all your skills, degen everything, and everything's dead. So yeah, that's generally how this build maps. It's fantastic for bossing, like I said. I mean, 40 million Shaper DPS or Cyrus DPS is pretty darn decent for how tanky this build is. But yeah, all gem links aside, those will all be in the PUB. You can check all that out. Gears there. Any questions, you can feel free to come to my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/skcloudy. I have a lot of my pay spins listed on there. I always answer questions, stuff like that. So feel free to stop by. Any other more, nonchalant questions and stuff like that, feel free to post them in the comment section below. And I appreciate it. And I will see you all later.